All right. Well, good evening to everybody that's joined us here for KSB Community Wellness's continuation of our Brain Health series. For those of you who might not remember, we started this series in February with a kickoff at the historic Dixon Theater with a speaker called Ben Nimpton. And then we went on the next month in March to talk about what is brain health. And in a nutshell, what's brain health? It's basically just saying that your brain's no different than any other organ or part of your body, and it needs to be taken care of. This Brain Health series, that's what we're all about. We're here to bring you information to make sure you're taking care of your brain. So we had to take a little bit of a hiatus with our COVID-19 challenge. And in May, we came to you with Dr. Jan and Melissa Gates. We talked to you a little bit about that anxiety and fear and depression that we all probably were feeling because of this COVID-19 challenge. Tonight, we are actually here to bring you something that's even more relevant because we found out that this COVID-19 challenge, it's here to stay for a little while and our norm has totally changed. So we're going to talk to you tonight about resilience and why you need it now more than ever. So before I get to our presenters, and we have two great presenters tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of housekeeping. My name's Nancy Varga. I'm the director of KSB Community Wellness. So you'll be hearing from me a little bit on questions I might have or questions we might see in the chat room. Along with me, thank God for him, is Matthew Lennox, who's helping us with the technical side of things. We couldn't do it without him. Thank you, Matthew, for everything you're doing. He'll chime in as well, probably with some questions that he might see in the chat room. And those questions are important to us folks. So we don't want you to wait until the end. We want this to be interactive. I think our presenters are going to be interactive. I might jump in, Matthew might jump in. We want you to jump in too with the questions that you have at the time you have them so that we can respond to you. So let's get on to our great presenters. We are fortunate enough tonight to have Dr. Wendy Sofolo, Dr. Kelly Flanagan. Let me tell you a little bit about Wendy Sofolo. After more than 30 years as a registered nurse, Dr. Wendy Sofolo earned a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree with a focus in executive nurse leadership. She acquired her board certification as a nurse manager leader and a certification in executive nursing practice, as well as becoming certified as a dementia practitioner. Dr. Sofolo's doctoral focus was the establishment of a home-based community palliative care program that exists today here at KSB. Wendy is currently the Director of Post-Acute Services at KSB. Dr. Kelly Flanagan, your other presenter, is the Clinical Director of Florissa. It's a division of the Kreider Services. It provides outpatient mental health care and comprehensive evaluations to children and families in our community and throughout North Central Illinois. Kelly is a licensed child psychologist who received her doctorate from Penn State University. She completed her doctoral internship at Lurie's Children's Hospital before joining the faculty of Wheaton College, where she served as the director of the doctoral training program. She resigned there in 2015 to join Florissa and satisfy her passion for working directly with children and families. So tonight you'll hear about resilience from the adult side and from the adolescent side and child side. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to both of our presenters, Wendy and Kelly.
All right, well, thank you very much for setting us up, Nancy, to have this be an interactive, and I am going to try and figure out how we go back. The clicker isn't working, Nancy, but we are going to be okay. All right, so Wendy and I are very excited to be here tonight with you all, and we do hope that you will be interactive with us. We will take breaks where we will stop and see if there are any questions, and then Nancy and Matthew will be chiming in when you pose questions to us. we are very excited that we'll be talking about different ends of the age spectrum as well. And I think the beauty of that, and kind of what Nancy had said at the beginning, is that we do not stop developing, we do not stop changing and growing across the course of our life. And so both of us sort of have a lifespan development perspective, and we'll be sharing that with you today about how you can really target some positive growth, even as we're faced with stressors. So, I do not know how to do this without the clicker. Okay. So, why is this so important of a topic? Well, no matter how much we try to protect ourselves or the ones we love, bad things will happen. So for kids, this could be any kind of major adverse event, and that can be a divorce or the loss of a parent, or some typical difficulties in childhood, such as being picked on by classmates or not getting along with the teacher or having a best friend move away. We also have small daily things like being excited for something and then having plans changed. I think we've all definitely experienced that over the last several months. Wendy had the birth of a grandchild, for instance. And so, that is a stressor that we might have had things that we were looking forward to, and then we have to cope with not having those things anymore. It can be really stressful and distressing to be learning something new and having that not come so easily. It could be a skinned knee, but all of these things every day, they are real problems, and they're stressors for the children that we interact with and for ourselves. But there's a flip side to this stress, and that's what Wendy and I want to talk about today, that we need this stress and we need this challenge in our life in order to develop an adaptive and healthy way to approach life. So just as our immune system needs to be exposed to germs and we benefit from our vaccines, we also need inoculation to stress. So there's a great author that writes about resilience, and he says, no one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom, from fear can come courage, and from suffering can come strength. So what we're going to talk about tonight are answer these questions. What is resilience? Why is it important? And how can you build it even in the face of a pandemic? Let's get down on that. Okay, so what do we mean by resilience? Researchers from many different fields have come together with a health-oriented approach. So they want to try to understand why some people flourish despite adversity and why some may not. The most basic definition is that resilience is positive adjustment despite the exposure to a stressor. So we have, in this balance, we have more positive outcomes than negative outcomes. Positive adjustment can mean psychological well-being, emotional health, and physical health. And we will talk about all of those. But the question then is, what helps some people not just survive, but thrive?
We could see the presenters right here before, but all of a sudden now we can't see them. So that's on their end, isn't it? I typed into the chat, we cannot see the presenters.
I think we wanted to have the slides there, but we can turn the video on. I do know how to do that. Would you like me to turn them on, Nancy? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
I'm waiting. Okay. Yep. There we go. All right. Can we be seen now? Hopefully you can. And you can adjust your view for the speakers if you would like to, for all of our viewers out there. Okay. So, so the question is, what helps some people not just survive, but to thrive? And that's really what the researchers have looked at. So if you have 10 children who we're going to follow and they experience a certain stressor, like the loss of a parent, And we're going to follow them and look at their outcomes and see what predicts positive outcomes. Or we have a school population of children who are going through a pandemic, and we want to understand why are some kids thriving in this new normal and why are other kids really having difficulty. And so we're going to look at their development and their adjustment, because their paths, they will take very different paths, and we want to understand that end point, but then all the things along the path that help them to get to that end point. So researchers basically are looking at the factors that nourish their thriving, and then be able to see what's available to others and how can we really help develop those factors, those protective factors, to help others adapt and adjust. So one of the things that we are very thankful for is that we do know that development is complex, it's always changing, and as part of the Brain Health series by KSB, as Nancy said, it's important to recognize that we do not stop developing. We can focus on these protective factors, so Wendy and I are going to share those with you today. One of the ways we can think about this is that when we face a challenge, the first time we go through it at an early age, but this is at any point in our life, it'll kind of be a big ravine. And we're going to have to build some pathways in our brain to figure out how are we going to cope with this? What are the ways that we can really adjust and adapt to these changes? And so by doing that over and over, we actually build a bridge across that ravine over time within our mind. And so our brain actually does adjust. And by sharing video, it lost that capability. So I'm going to the next slide. Find a different way.
There we are. See, we'll find a way.
We will find a way.
Over that ravine. And I really like that analogy of building a bridge across that ravine. So this definition is one that I really like. It further defines resilience as the ability of people, a person, a family, community to live and grow with a continually changing environment. So for adults, can't make the assumption that resilience is simply bouncing back, because we know that as we go through life, we are faced with some serious stressors, such as divorce or death, other losses that can be just as traumatic for us. Serious illness is one that I've worked with the patients in my population for a good deal of time. And we spend a lot of time helping them to find ways to adjust and to alleviate symptoms that come along with those stressors and those illnesses and the changes that they face in their own person and their abilities. Without the clicker, we're figuring it out. So a changing environment equals stress, and stress can be incremental, abrupt, severe, or prolonged. Well, these broad categories can apply to any age. I'm going to share a little bit about adult stressors. An incremental stressor might be thought of like a pregnancy, and many of us have experienced the gradual physical and emotional, relational, and economic stresses that accompany a pregnancy. There's a lot of changes that go on here, and they affect your entire environment. Ask my daughter. She just had one. Another thing that's top of mind for me is aging, because today is my 60th birthday. So I'm thinking a lot about how things have changed for me and how I might be coping with things that come up here soon. We change in our physical capabilities, how we think about and perceive the future, how we should plan for things, how we engage with our environment in an ongoing basis. I may be transitioning from caregiver to care receiver within the next 10, 20 years of my life. And so those are things for me to start thinking about. Abrupt stressors are by definition sudden, unexpected, such as loss of a job, death of a loved one, All stress is not necessarily framed as negative. I mean, I could win the lottery and that would be a stressor. It would change a lot in my environment, but I would call that good. We'll see.
Changing jobs,
sure,
changing
absolutely.
location, where you live, all of those.
For sure. Even the birth of my children, those were stressors, but they were great. PTSD, however, has an obvious connection with the military experiences, but we could add to that physical or emotional abuse, neglect, or a constant financial hardship. And that may be a prolonged, severe, ongoing stressor that could lead to a PTSD situation. So what are we feeling right now? I think that this COVID pandemic has included all of those types of abrupt, incremental stress for much of our population. At least everybody I know has been stressed by this. I feel like it happened overnight, and yet it feels like it just never stops. It's something constant. At the hospital, we endured constant changes, even hourly, in how we were managing things to protect our populations, our patients, and each other. So when we talk about COVID, we will talk a little bit more of how we can manage where we are in the upcoming slides that we'll go through, and how we can reach out to others and enable ourselves to build our resilience and endure and grow throughout this.
And Wendy, just so you know, we actually have a happy birthday on the chat for you.
Oh,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Again, maybe a very positive, but also stressful
It is,
birthday. Huh?
yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a milestone. So I appreciate that very much. So
and Wendy,
why-
you might want to move up just a little bit for your next slide when you're ready, just so we can hear you a little bit better. As long
Okay.
as you stay 6 foot apart.
That's, we're trying
I'll
really
move
hard
back.
to maintain that and maintained our safety and respect for one another here. So why is resilience important? My work in nursing is to decrease some suffering in our patient population by symptom management and promoting well-being in my patient population with chronic illness. Therefore, I see improving resilience as being key to improving the lives of those patients and their loved ones and ourselves. Developing resilience enables us to cope with change and trauma, and we know that we're all going to have those serious and abrupt occurrences in our life. It's part of the continuum that we all endure, that we all experience. Developing resilience will help us have better brain health. It helps us have a better sense of well-being, decreased mortality risk. That's important to me as I'm 60 today. Increased longevity and more independence in our activities of daily living. And that for me is going to be very important throughout the next 15, 20 years of my life. I want to be able to maintain my independence as long as possible. So developing resilience and developing these habits that encourage resilience are going to be very important for me.
All right. So, great. That one. Okay. So as we face the stressors that we're inevitably going to have happen to us throughout our lifetime, we can be passive recipients of the crisis and victims, or we can become active responders. And that's really what we want to help you to make a conscious decision about when we're presenting the protective factors. And the way you can develop that resilience muscle is that we want you to be able to tell the story that you want to tell with your lives. So to do this, we can focus on on the things that we can control and choose to see any stress or adversity not as toxic, right? But as a chance to develop grit. So you can see this is a national sort of awareness about resilience, the Resilience Project. And I think it's kind of funny because we can't stop stress, but they added that word toxic. We can stop toxic stress. So stress is going to occur, but we can prevent it from being toxic to us. When I refer to the word grit, that's really the ability to get through those hard times when we're faced with them. And so it's not as meaningful that something difficult has happened to us, though they can be very big things. It's much more meaningful our experience of that event and how we respond to it. Okay, so one of the first researchers who looked at resilience was a developmental psychologist, and she, her name was Emmy Werner, and she followed kids in the island of Kauai for 40 years. So she followed them from their birth and onward. And people thought she was kind of a little nuts at first, because she believed that she was going to be able to identify what happens to these kids when they were faced with difficulties in their lives, but actually turned out well. And so what she found is that most people can overcome difficult experiences. And it sort of surprised everybody that when we look at these major things that can happen in someone, these adverse events, we actually may see positive outcomes. And so just over, in probably the last 5 years, if you've heard the word ACEs, these are adverse childhood experiences. They're some of the big ones, those abrupt and stressful, traumatic ones that Wendy had talked about. They've been really prominent in media and presentations we've had here in our community, and it's great to be aware of those things. But more recently, we've been had researchers and clinicians who are talking about benevolent childhood experiences. So this is pretty small on your screen, but you can see 10 major ones that are asked about to say, okay, if you've had 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these things, then that's going to predict positive outcomes. And so many of these things are either protective factors that are within the person, or they're familial, they're within your family and your immediate context, or they're in your broader environment. And that is what Wendy and I will talk about, what we've learned from this research. Okay, so I like this little cartoon here because I feel like that's what I have felt like through most of the last several months, that I felt like I was getting a handle on things, and all of a sudden my neurons in my brain got all fuzzy and it was difficult to manage. And then I'd have to focus on the list on your right, all these protective factors that are within me that I can really try to practice and develop and strengthen when faced with all the stressors that have occurred. We were so excited, my family, to move into the next phase and to stop our the stay-at-home order and start seeing people again. And then one of my family members went flying off the front of a bicycle and broke a collarbone. That kind of put us all back into the stress, and things happen in life. And so now we're having to focus again, even as some of the limitations have been lifted with coronavirus. And it was good that we were already practicing some of these, but it's not easy, and we do need to make a conscious decision to practice those. So some of the protective factors are biological in nature. So they're exercise and good nutrition and healthy sleep. And they're also the coping skills, so the tools that we use to problem solve and accomplish our goals and deal with the strong emotions that we're feeling. But I wanted to talk about some of the other ones that you may not have thought about as protective factors, because I think those are much more typical when we think of them. There's a lot of evidence that having good social skills is important, because that helps us get positive attention from others and helps us to reach out and have those relationships that we can draw from when we need help. Just being aware of who you are and what your characteristics are and what your weaknesses are, and then being able to know, hey, I have some agency, I have some control, and I can affect the environment around me is really important. Just having the motivation to change. And so I know from lifespan development, at the older end of the age spectrum, the idea of generativity is really important, right? And that is when even at the later stages of life, you're going to be contributing, you're going to be having an effect and on the people around you in your environment. And so we don't want to lose that sense of agency as we get older. And if we're developing it every time we face stress, that only helps us in our outcomes later in life. When we know that we have that motivation to change over time. Hope, faith, and optimism. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth, but those help us to know that they remind us that we have a future, that there is something that we can believe in, that we might feel connected to, a positive outlook. And that's not a Pollyanna kind of experience, but it's just a deeper connection to others and to the world around us. And that can give us a great sense of hope in the future. And when we're faced with an unknown future, as we have with COVID, and we don't know what's happening in the next year, it's really important to have that sense of optimism and hope. And well, we can adapt to this and change. The belief that life has meaning and a purpose to what we're doing ourselves. And then this is my favorite finding from Emmy Warner's work into resilience is humor. We need to be able to recognize that we are facing a problem and what that problem is, and then finding some ways to laugh at it, the problem and ourselves. And that is not always easy with many of the stressors, even that both Wendy and I have labeled as the bigger stressors. But I found myself during COVID turning to a lot of comedians and seeing how they were handling it, because it helped me get through some of the difficult moments.
So can you share any of those comedians that we should be watching?
Well, I don't know. Everyone has their own style of comedians.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
I had one that was really good that I think everyone would like. It actually just he just sold it because he had such a great response. Was John Krasinski from The Office developed the Some Good News Network, SGN, and you can go back and watch them. They were just wonderful. He just reported on positive things, and that was really cute. It was very good. Yeah.
Great,
Plus,
thank
you gotta
you.
like John Krasinski.
Right? I
From
mean,
The
who
Office.
doesn't?
Absolutely. That was great. So, and I've enjoyed these comics. That's why I chose to put them sprinkled throughout here, because I thought it was really kind of funny. The day after day, stress, anxiety, mad at the world and such, and flying by the seat of our pants. Flying by the seat of our pants every single day in the month of April. That's exactly how it felt to me. And it just, it was, struck my funny bone looking at those. So developing resilience prepares us not only to survive, but to grow through change, age successfully, and support those that we care for and about. So for adults, how do we do this? First, we need to accept that people are social and need to feel connectedness to others. So connection to others is important for that sense of well-being through the evolution and progression of serious illness. It's just an important given that we need to be connected, and we need to find ways to be connected. And I enjoyed one thing that Kelly said was you have to figure out that way across the ravine. And I find that funny because it's been a mantra. It's been a mantra in my family for about the last 10 to 15 years that, whenever something comes up, what are we going to do? It would be, we'll figure it out. And I even joked that was going to be my next tattoo, is we're just going to put, we'll figure it out, because we have no choice. We have to figure it out. And that helps us to then manage our ways through, who would have thought a pandemic? But that's what it's come to. And I'm hopeful that my kids have learned some of that as we've struggled our way through the last 15 years. So developing and maintaining those connections is something that we need to cultivate. And it's irrelevant what age we are, we have to work on that. And it needs to be a concerted effort. So building a foundation of those behaviors that Dr. Kelly talked about a couple of slides ago will make them available when the opportunity presents to meet a change or a challenge. So let's talk about COVID. COVID has really messed with people's connectedness, among other things.
Okay, so, whoops, no. So the protective factors that we've been talking about have been a lot of internal, and then Wendy just moved into those connections. For kids, those connections are really first and foremost within the family. And so they're not just in the child or in the person, but they are also the supports that they can get around them. So some of the things that have been really important to recognize about COVID is that our lives have been intensely disrupted. Children have been highly affected by all the changes and uncertainties that are around them. And so families are able to then focus on and draw from some of the social supports in order to give a sense of security, both emotionally and physically, to kids. They all give a sense of structure, consistency, predictability in their lives. So what are some of these things that we know are really important within the family? Having very clear routines and where a child knows what is happening next and what's expected of them, whether that's sleep routines or sitting down for dinner, knowing what you were doing in the morning, when you exercise, those kinds of things, who's doing the chores. Those were important during the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, and going forward. Whether this, I think I'm gonna say one of the things from the research on resilience is that mental health workers can actually be really helpful to kids and adults, about as helpful as having pets, right? Some of the research shows, so pets are a great and probably cheaper way to do it. But what's really important for kids is if they can say that they had at least one really strong, supportive relationship with an adult. And that's that attachment, that sense that I belong and I'm worthy, and I know that someone cares for me and I have a place. And so that also comes to that idea of belonging and cohesion, that if as a family, we're going to figure things out. We are going to face struggles. We're not always going to get along. We're going to have bickering and arguments, but we're going to try and work this out. We're going to do that collaboratively, and then we'll have to be flexible because when you're living with other people, that requires a great deal of flexibility. I love, Wendy, the question that or the mantra that you have in your family, and I would add to, I think, from being a child psychologist, one of the things I really try to talk with clients about, and definitely my own kids and myself, is what can I learn from this, right? And so because if we approach life saying, okay, how can we learn, and how can we learn together? And maybe if we have open communication and we're talking about these things and we're regulating each other, that's what co-regulation means. If we're helping each other deal with the stress and cope with it, then we're going to continue growing and learning from the event.
So how do we express empathy and compassion and joy when we all have a mask on? How do we convey that to the people that we care about? If I have a grandparent or a parent who's in a long-term care facility, how do I help her or help my granddad, or just the people I see on the street when they can't see my face? They don't know if I'm smiling. And we know that conveys a lot to people, just facial expressions. So the one thing that we can do is we can help them to build connections. We can prioritize our own relationships, make time and accept support from others. Sometimes we like to be so self-sufficient that we think we're fine, but it's important that we take make a concerted effort to be open and to accept help. Participate in social groups, even if they're virtual. Find like-minded individuals, have a conference call, have a Zoom meeting. Ask for help, check with the church, check with some youngsters who might be more tech savvy than you are. And I know that there's a lot of people, and most people are more tech savvy than me, but I also know that I can ask, and the worst that I can be is pointed to somewhere else. I even reached out today to the Lee County Council on Aging and asked what they have available. And they do have help for people that need some advice. They had a great program going before COVID where they had students who would meet with people. And now they're doing it virtually to help folks set up accounts, help them understand their technology, and they'll help you reach out. And there's, I'm sure, there are some youngsters that would be happy to be helpful and feel needed, and that's self-satisfying even.
Well, what a great resource too,
Yeah.
to help people continue to build connections and not feel alone.
And that leads into the next one. You know, we want to foster wellness, treat your body well. Florence Nightingale had it right way back when. You need fresh air, you need good nutrition, you need sleep, you need rest to foster wellness within your body, and finding purpose. So you're asking somebody for help, you're creating a purpose for them, so you're doing them a favor, you know. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Practicing self-care, take your medicines, avoid alcohol, and foster those healthy habits that make you feel good and feed your body. Practice mindfulness, just being in the moment, enjoying nature, art, music, those things that bring pleasure and joy can help to feed that feeling of well-being. And maintain a routine. As Kelly mentioned, maintaining a routine is not just for children, it's adults thrive on it. I know that if I'm awake late over the weekend, I love staying up late and doing things, reading and listening to podcasts and audiobooks. Sunday night, I can't sleep worth a darn, and I feel terrible on Monday. So, I mean, COVID has been not good for us in that respect. We're not maintaining that routine that's healthy for our bodies. And find a purpose and start small. Helping others, make a phone tree, call your relatives, reach out and find out how they're doing. That can be satisfying to oneself, and you can be helping others, and that can be a purpose. It's small, starting small, but it is effective.
Right. So those were a lot of the things that are really important for us to focus on as adults. What do we do in order to build our children's muscles, our children's resilience muscle? So when some kind of stressful or traumatic event occurs, a child will experience stress and have all sorts of responses to that, and then they'll receive support. And some of that, again, will be drawn internal supports, their traits or characteristics, their personality, the coping skills they develop, but they'll also receive social supports, especially from those closest to them. And then that will, in turn, build and strengthen those internal supports, and they'll learn that it's safe to utilize those that are around them. So the main things, I'm going to present 4 different ones that we're going to, I'll suggest for you to focus on with your children. The first is building that sense of connection and contribution. So encourage empathy, so awareness of what others might be feeling, what their perspective is, and then help your child make connections with not only peers, but other adults. Have them help out in the community, connect with neighbors, other people in your neighborhood, a school club, extracurricular teams. All of these help kids know that they're not alone, so that when they do struggle, they can develop, they can build on those relationships and also develop social skills within those relationships. I think probably during COVID, one of the main examples of this are the hearts on all of our windows. That brought so many kids a sense of connection and contribution with those around them in the midst of staying at home and not seeing as many people. I love driving around and seeing those. And mask making is another one. Yep. There have been so many beautiful ways that even when we were stuck at home, that kids can still feel that sense of contribution and care for others. And that will help them feel, even if they're feeling lonely, they'll know that they are not alone. And there is a difference there between those two things. Okay, we want to strive for consistency, so that structure, routine, predictability, even during stressful times. One of the things that we tell families when a kid experiences even big traumas, getting them back into that normal routine is really helpful. You want to be processing, you don't want to minimize what has occurred, but also you want to give them a sense that, okay, life is still going on and you can handle this, and for them to know what to expect because they just faced something that was so unexpected. So maintaining the daily routine, teaching healthy self-care, and then these rhythms of life help kids feel secure and know what to expect. And they all all kids want to know that they can have some kind of control over their lives and their environment. So they're going to push the limits. They're going to, try and push against the boundaries that you've set. But if you allow them to do this within the boundaries that you've set, and make sure those are healthy boundaries, then they'll still feel like they have they're exerting some sort of effect and control over their lives. So I know this happened a lot with remote learning, where parents or teachers say, okay, you can do this or this. That's that sense of control. Or you can decide when during the day you're going to do your chores and Zoom call and playtime and screen time and schoolwork. And you've set the boundary, these are expected things, but you can decide on when you're doing them. And that helps kids feel in an uncontrollable situation that they have control. We can also help our children set goals and then move toward them in a very clear, organized, sort of planful way, step by step, and that helps them build competence. So kids really do need to know when they're doing something right. They need to be recognized for that. We've had some pushback for many years about, we praise our kids too much. No, kids do need praise. We don't want to make it something that is not true, and we don't want to overdo it and give them a false sense of confidence, but we need to recognize the things that they're really good at or the things that they just love and the passions that they have, and then provide them with positive feedback and encouragement for those things. And that will nurture a positive self-view and build their confidence so that they know, okay, I can handle adversity when it comes at me. So during COVID, and if we have to be home again, one of the things, could be learning to cook for the family while you're sheltering in place. That helps, a kid learn to be a learner, to try new things, even when they might not feel competent, and to achieve a goal that maybe felt unachievable to them. And finally, we want to help our kids learn about who they are and develop personal values. This takes a lot of communication about the emotions they might be feeling, the emotions we're feeling, what the situation is. So having that open communication and problem solving together is really important. If we think about how kids develop coping and regulation, they don't just do it. Babies don't soothe themselves naturally, and maybe some are thumbsuckers, but that doesn't soothe them all the time, right? They actually are soothed by their parents. And so similarly throughout life, we will help a child recognize what they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and then give them ways to handle it. And we have a lot of great opportunities right now to talk about that, as we're all experiencing a lot of emotions, the development of a sense of identity and our personal values. We have a lot going on in our society right now, and those can be conversations that we have with our kids to learn, this is happening and these are different viewpoints, and what do you think? And just developing that sense of personal values. And then I think the last thing is one of the coping that we mentioned very briefly is just maintaining a hopeful outlook and gratitude. So if we can help kids realize that change is a part of life, and that we can look around even in the midst of change and see the things that we are thankful for and that we still have I mean, just being able to breathe the fresh air. You know, we moved here from the suburbs, and I gotta tell you, I've been thankful for so many things. It was very easy when I saw what was happening in other counties, and for us to be here and be able to walk outside and enjoy nature and see the river, those are just daily things that we have in our life that we can be thankful for. And when we have that sense of gratitude, we actually can help kids see that life isn't so scary or overwhelming, but it can be something that we have growth for. Oh, well, thank you. We're done now anyway, Matthew. Okay, so now my full face is in.
Then I do have a question.
Yes.
So I'll ask it off screen. What is, you guys had mentioned podcasts earlier. Do you guys have any podcasts that you would recommend? I know people are out and about, they don't have as much to do. I know I love listening to a podcast, and I would be really interested in learning more. So is there anything that you guys would recommend?
I like Brene Brown. Anything by Brene
Anything
Brown.
Brene
Yeah,
Brown.
she's great.
Can we repeat Matthew's question so everybody's
Yes,
aware?
Matthew asked, are there, when you're out and about and want something that sort of, I think, helps you grow and continue to think about things, what are some good podcasts that people could listen to? Yeah, there's one for kids it's about growth mindset. I want to say it's called Big Life, but if you type in, you know, growth mind, I can pull it up on my phone. I don't know the title of it, but it's a great podcast, yeah, for kids, just to say, okay, I'm faced with a problem and I can grow from this, and it's not too big of a problem.
Okay.
There's
So-
also some mindfulness podcasts that are really, really good. So Headspace is a great app you can download.
Calm.
Yep, Calm is
Is
another
a
really
good
good
app.
one. Yeah.
So, so I love the ideas you're giving out there. So, you know what? When we wrap up, why don't we just like plan on this presentation it's being recorded. So it'll be on the KSB website. It'll be on the Florissa website, correct?
Yep.
Am I correct? Yeah. So we'll have these resources. We'll have some of maybe the other ones that you've just shared tonight. If you guys can leave those with us. I'm a person that I'm visual. I always have to see things, so I can hear it. But if I don't write it down or see it, I won't get to it again. So maybe we can do that. Another question is, so Dr. Flanagan, I know you were sharing some of building the child muscle. Would you agree, or maybe it's at a different level, how do some of those things then also, and Dr. Sofolo, please you chime in too, some of those things are certainly relevant to the adult world. Would that be true?
Absolutely. And I would say, Nancy, that when it's nice when we do have exposure to kids and we're helping them learn, because it reminds us, oh, I'm not so good at that one, and maybe I need to practice it myself, or you know, let's practice this together, and we're both going to be building this muscle. I know that, you know, having my kids at home during you know, remote learning, we did have to have more of a routine, and I don't know if we would have had that, and that was a good reminder to me.
Right. Routine. You know, I heard you say something about gratitude. I know whether you're a child or an adult, you know, especially, I think it's a pretty big thing. I know I do one myself, a gratitude book where, you know, each morning or in the evening, you know, 3 things that I found that I'm very grateful for that occurred during the day, or you know, something like that. I think those goals are another thing that we all forget. They're easy to, oh yeah, I do need to set some goals, but you know, keeps you moving forward to achieve those goals. So yeah, so that was a question we had. Matthew, do we have any other questions that you showed?
Nancy, I'll point people to this calendar that we included on the back. It's from the website Action for Happiness, and that it's exactly what you just said. I don't know if you can see the quote It says every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day. And it's just that reminder to look around you, and even if you can just find one thing, it changes your perspective.
And for
It-
adults,
it
Nancy,
really
you talked about
does.
keeping, writing down something you were grateful for, but journaling is a great thing for adults. You can even tape record yourself. When my mom was alive, she would write letters to my children, and my youngest would write back to her. And they were wonderful at the time, and they're even more precious now.
Oh, absolutely. What a great thing.
And-
Talk about some memories to be able to hang on to. So,
And people love snail mail. They really do. I mean, I get nothing in my mailbox anymore, and I would love to have something that was pleasant and to look forward to.
right. Absolutely. That's not junk mail, right? Wendy?
Exactly.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
goes
So-
into the house and not in the trash can.
Right, exactly. I know we do have, will these slides be available after this event for those that may have missed it? And yes, for those of you who have not heard that, we will have the slide presentation as well as the recording itself on our KSB website and the Florissa website. And we'll add to this some of the other things that were shared by the doctors tonight of where they could go for some help. Okay, one more question. Let's see. I'm sorry, am I gonna? Okay, thank you. So how does resilience relate to adult major depression? That's a question that's out there.
That's a wonderful question. I think, so all of these protective factors that lead to resilience really do, they come from what we know helps people have better outcomes. And that includes if you're experiencing some kind of mental health disorder or problem in your life. And so with depression, one of the hardest things to do is to maintain a routine, to get up, to do things that you enjoy, to problem solve, to have a sense of purpose and meaning, and reach out to others, and not just isolate yourself and withdraw. So all of these protective factors are things that you could focus on just to practice. If you did one thing in each of those categories per day, it would help you greatly. And that's what therapists, they do to help people overcome depressive symptoms, is to focus on a lot of these things. And I would say, Wendy, probably, for folks overcoming a serious illness, they can lots of times feel depressed and feel like they've lost their previous life prior to the illness, right? And have to recoup. So my guess is some of these things would be important as well.
Loss of control, loss of their autonomy, and connection, being able to ask for help, being open to help as well.
Yeah, good point. Being open to help and making that connection. Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point in our chat room or in the Facebook Live. I will share with you that we will continue to monitor the questions on Facebook, and we will definitely field those questions and get back to you from the doctors. Is there anything else, Dr. Flanagan, Dr. Sofolo, that we can add to this?
I would say, that resilience isn't some mysterious, difficult thing that you're born with and that we don't understand. I think we, hopefully some of those protective factors that we listed will challenge you to maybe develop and continue strengthening some of the things that are already helping you.
Developing the behaviors, develop the traits, helps to build that resilience.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I want to especially thank our presenters, Dr. Sofolo, Dr. Flanagan, for the insight that you gave us tonight. It was a lot of good information, a lot of information to take in. KSB Community Wellness is excited to be back, to be able to present virtually or otherwise. We may try something at the Elks Club at the end of July. That's going to be another series that we have on our senses. So you'll learn more about your eyes, your ears, the taste, the smell, allergies especially will be in there, which I think we're all experiencing. So again, thank you to both of our doctors. Thank you for the folks that were here with us. Matthew, I think we have maybe around 30 people with us. So reaching 30 people helps. That makes a difference. Spread the word. That recording's going to be out there. And thank you to everyone that was with us tonight. Have a good evening.